The violence in Ukraine has caused a refugee crisis unlike anything we've seen since World War II. The United Nations estimates that more than 7 million people living in Ukraine have been displaced, with 4.5 million of them becoming refugees and fleeing Ukraine altogether, most of them seeking shelter in neighboring European countries. The US has announced plans to take in up to 100,000 of these Ukrainian refugees and to provide $1 billion in new humanitarian aid. Some Ukrainians have already come to the US under what's called humanitarian parole status, a temporary designation that allows refugees to live and work in America for 1 year without a visa. But as Catherine Rampell of the Washington Post points out, we're not on pace to admit overall anywhere near 100,000 refugees this fiscal year. In fact, if the current admission pace continues, this country would admit a mere fraction of that, just over 20,000. But our policy to, rhetorically at least, welcome Ukrainians from overseas has highlighted the ongoing debate about who we choose to welcome into this country and who we don't, particularly at our southern border. The Biden administration recently announced that it will end Title 42 in 6 weeks on May the 23rd. That's the controversial pandemic restriction enacted under President Trump, which allowed the U.S. to turn away hundreds of thousands of asylum seekers. And now that President Biden has finally decided to end Title 42, he's coming under fire, not just from Republicans, everyone expected that, but also from some Democrats. Mandela Barnes, the lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, who's also trying to stake out his place as a Senate candidate, said, and I quote, "I'd like to see Biden put forward a comprehensive plan that deals with an influx of asylum seekers before we lift Title 42. This from a guy trying to position himself as an alternative to Republican firebrand Ron Johnson. Meanwhile, Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, now trying to defend her seat in a tight re-election bid, tweeted of Title 42 that this preemptive repeal threatens border security at a time when the administration should be focused on strengthening it. And then she headed to the border. There are shamefully a litany of other conservative Democrats, including, yes, Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, obviously, who are now working with Republicans on a bill to extend the cruel and arbitrary Title 42. Of course they are. Of course they are. Democrats talk a good game on refugees, but whether they can actually be the party of refugees or whether they even want to be is another matter entirely. Joining me now, Democratic Congressman Mark Pocan of Wisconsin. He's the former chair of the House Progressive Caucus. Congressman, thanks for joining me on the show. It's great we're taking in Ukrainian refugees and making it easier for them to come in. But when you look at those Washington Post calculations suggesting we're on course to take in only around 20,000 refugees this year when the president's stated goal was 125,000, that is shameful, is it not?
Yeah, well, first, thanks for having me. When you're the greatest nation in the world, you have an obligation to the world to take in refugees like many other countries do. Donald Trump stopped much of that. Almost every single agency in my district that helped settle refugees went out of business during the Trump administration. And Title 42 had, I think, far less to do with COVID and a lot more to do with an extension of the wall and all of the other really divisive, hateful rhetoric that Donald Trump and some Republicans put forward. So, you know, I think this is the right move so that we can actually allow people who have legitimate asylum claims to be able to legitimately be refugees in this country like we have done for a very long time and as we should continue to do as the greatest democracy on the planet.
So that's the Ukrainian situation. You have the situation at the southern border, which you alluded to, with the president finally undoing this Donald Trump, Stephen Miller, cruel policy, Title 42, that denies all asylum claims from Central Americans at the southern border. And yet sitting Democratic senators like Maggie Hassan, Mark Kelly, Kyrsten Sinema are coming out in defense of Title 42. Senator Hassan even went to the border and did a GOP-style video standing by a fence. What has happened to parts of the Democratic Party?
Yeah, the problem is this is an issue that it's so easy for the Republicans to demonize brown skin bad, right? They can say it in a few words or a sentence, and we have to, unfortunately, sometimes go into a little broader and remind people that we're a melting pot of different people, in many cases refugees, and that this is exactly what a country like ours has always done and should always do. But that takes a lot longer. And sometimes I think the politically expedient way to go forward is to just say, oh, well, we shouldn't do it yet, or some other variation of that. Bottom line is, you know, this is going to be an ugly campaign year, right? I mean, post Donald Trump, there's pretty much no limit.
It's going to be ugly, Congressman, but Democrats don't need to contribute to the ugliness.
No, I agree, but it's awful. For a lot of people, they don't want to fight the resistance. As I said, you're going to have to explain that in paragraphs. Unfortunately, Democrats sometimes talk in paragraphs, Republicans in headlines, but their message is so easy because it baits on the fear that they've already put out there for decades about people who may look or be different than us. So, it's not saying that it's right. In fact, we should be doing exactly what Joe Biden is doing. But that's, I think, why you see some candidates saying that.
Congressman, your party is heading for what looks like a rout in the midterms, the loss of the House for sure, and maybe the Senate too. And prominent Democrats look like they're already getting ready to blame the left, to blame progressives for defeat. What's your response to that?
Yeah, first of all, political years are like dog years. There's a lot of time to November, right? We have a COVID hangover. There's no question. I think that is going away. And inflation is a huge issue. Both of those block us from talking about the massively great things we did. I mean, I've been in Congress now for a decade. I've never seen a bills like the American Rescue Plan that put $1,400 into people's pockets, got kids back into schools safely, got shots in arms and people into jobs. We passed a $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill. We've talked about infrastructure for years and years and years. We actually did it last year. This year, a bill that got almost no notice, postal reform, is going to guarantee people continue to get 6-day delivery. That's the number one thing I've had people contacting my office about is concerns that are happening at the postal service.
So you're saying you could still win, fair enough, but if you lose, you're going to get blamed, right? The progressives are going to get blamed.
Oh, we always get blamed, trust me, because there are way too many special interests in Washington who want to keep their nice vacation homes. So I'm used to that. Bottom line, though, is we know that people, real people who go out and vote, agree with progressives on the issues. The real challenge is making sure they get out to vote. I sat through a focus group of surge voters, people who don't always come out right after the last election, and they expect Democrats to get something done. We didn't get as much done as we would have liked, the Build Back Better agenda. But right now, we're fighting heavy winds of inflation and COVID. Again, one of them may be going away, but we have to explain that they're related. I've been a small business owner for 3 decades, 34 years. I can tell you that the reason we have the inflation we have is everything opened up about the same time last year. We don't make enough things in the U.S. Demand was up. It's like economics, not even 101, yes. Economics 99. If there's scarcity, prices go up. But you can't blame Joe Biden for inflation in France or Australia or Germany or every other country that has inflation, and yet Republicans again will put that lie out there.
Switching tack before we run out of time, we had the horrific subway shooting in New York yesterday. The suspect fired 33 times, shot and injured 10 people. Once again, people are talking about violent crime and how the Democrats are soft on it. What about the Republican blocking of popular gun control measures? Shouldn't Democrats be making a bigger issue out of that? These mass shootings don't happen anywhere else in the Western world.
Absolutely. And again, people agree with us. But I think, again, pocketbook issues are really important. The fact that Joe Biden administration, the first year, had the greatest amount of job growth in the country's history is significant. And, we again have to get past those conversations about inflation where oil companies are ripping off consumers. There's other things related to that we got to deal with. But we have a great economic message of creating jobs and getting the country reopened after COVID-19. Ultimately, at the end of the day, I think that economic message is still our best foot forward.
But on guns, you could be saying more about how Republicans are the ones who are soft on crime because they don't do anything about gun control.
Well, absolutely. And this ghost gun issue, talk about a legitimate gun shop who wants to sell something. This often can go around even the sales that they have. So, we have laws that we actually should be fixing the loopholes that over 80% of the people agree with us on. And we absolutely are talking about those. That's why Joe Biden did that. But, if you're really looking towards November, even though I said it's dog years away, economics, whether or not you are able to pay your rent and mortgage, put food on your table, have a vacation, have healthcare for your family. Those are still the core economic issues. And Democrats are winning on every front on those. And we should keep talking about those as our primary conversation.
Last question, just circling back to Ukraine. You have been a vocal critic of the ever-expanding Pentagon budget. Are you concerned at all with the Pentagon meeting with the CEOs of the 8 biggest defense contractors to talk about sending more weapons to Ukraine? Are you concerned that the military-industrial complex in this country is going to use the war in Ukraine to push for an even bigger U.S. defense budget, even though we already spend more than the next 11 countries combined?
Oh, no question. They and the Hawks. The problem is the defense budget has become a jobs program. And I mentioned we have good job numbers we can actually tout, but every single district has defense contractors. I do. I have a company in my district that makes a part as big as your pinky that goes into submarines and aircraft carriers. And every year they ask me to buy more than the Department of Defense asks for so they can put that little part in there. Unfortunately, many members of Congress cave into that as an economics jobs argument, when in reality, we don't even audit the Pentagon. Our most recent class of aircraft carrier, when it gets the toilets clogged, it takes $400,000 worth of chemicals to flush down the toilet to unclog them. That literally is flushing money down the toilet, and yet we don't have an audit of the Pentagon. We have amphibious vehicles that only sink. That's not the intention of an amphibious vehicle. We need to put less money to defense contractors and more money to things that are really in the defense of this nation, like fighting pandemics, fighting climate change, and addressing cyber attacks.
Well said. Congressman Mark Pocan, thank you for your time. Hi, I'm Mehdi Hasan. Thanks for checking out our channel on YouTube. You can see more of the Mehdi Hasan Show by clicking on any of the videos on this screen, and make sure you subscribe below to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. Thank you for watching.